Welcome to USMNT Weekly, your one-stop shop for discussion of American soccer on the biggest stage. Today, we're looking ahead to 2026, and we are building our dream US rosters for the World Cup. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, it's someone as American as a bald eagle riding a jet ski while eating a corn dog. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello, Taylor.
That should be the American flag. That should be the new crest of the United States. And it might well be soon. We'll see how it goes. Hello, Ryan Bailey. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, thank you for joining us, Taylor. That was the three most American things I could think of, so I grouped them together. I hope that's okay.
I feel like a corn dog is a good thing for Americans to export around the world. Everybody loves pig and fried things, so what could go wrong?
There we go. Also joining us, Graham Ruthven. I don't know what a corn dog is, Graham. Do you?
Is that like an animal? What is
Yes.
that? No, I'm not entirely sure, Ryan.
It's a luxury
Could you
pet.
do an explainer for me, please?
Maybe Joe Lowry can. Hello, Joe.
Yeah, corn dogs are great. You guys both need to have as many as you can between now and when you die. Also, I don't think it's just us doing the corn dogs. I think Korea does a
Nope.
mean corn dog as well.
Just us.
I don't know. I feel like in some ways this is actually harmful to our brand as a country more so than it is helpful. What I will say is this whole day I'm pretending that today is yesterday, because if we'd done this show yesterday, we would have been exactly 500 days away from the start of the 2026 World Cup. That's seamless planning. We definitely didn't do that on accident, and we're definitely pretending it's Monday.
We're just celebrating the 499 days until the World Cup anniversary today. That's all we're
Correct.
doing, Joe. That's fine.
Yeah, I've got
That's
t-shirts on the
terrifying.
way to all of you guys.
That is
by the way.
absolutely terrified that it's only 499 days to the World Cup. When I was younger, it felt like lifetimes would pass between World Cups, and now now they come too quickly. Like, can we push it back a year, please, FIFA?
It is really strange though that it's more like it's more than a year away. It's more than a year and a half away, or about a year and a half away, and yet it also feels like it's right around the corner. And it is a strange one when you then look at the roster, how much would have to happen for certain players between now and the summer of 2026 for them to make a jump. It narrows the pool a little bit, but I am excited to be here. I am excited to talk about not just corn dogs, but also the roster.
There you go. We have fewer days than Gordon Joseph Levitt had of summer in that movie with Zoe Deschanel. That was a bad reference. Let's keep
Proclaimers.
going, shall we?
Proclaimers was the way to go there, Ryan. I would go 500 days.
Darn
That
it.
was the reference.
Graham's right, as always. Very good. Graham, we should investigate corn dogs further. But in the meantime, let's...
You
let's
put a Cheeto in the ground, you pour Mountain Dew on it, and in 6 months, a corn dog grows.
That's how the Pilgrims
I
did
see.
it, right?
Yep. Yeah.
I think so, yeah, very good. Joe, you mentioned I should have as many as I can until the day I die. Will that day come sooner if I have many corn dogs?
Absolutely, but the days will be richer, literally and maybe more figuratively.
Are you meant to dip corn dogs in something? Because I've
Ketchup.
only had a corn dog once,
Graham.
and it was so dry. It was so
Ketchup.
unbelievably dry. Am I meant to dip it in something? Honey mustard or something
Joe would
like
say
that?
ketchup. I would say, Graham, this is the land of the free and the home of the brave. You eat your corn dog however you want, big dog.
Syrup it is.
Whenever
That would work.
that only applies so much, Taylor, because whenever Graham says literally any Scottish food, I think we tell him not to eat that and instead come to our country to eat other food.
Yeah.
But I guess that's fine.
Although, I mean, Joe, he's got me here. If you had a breakfast sausage.
Oh,
like
no,
a
I was
maple
in on the
breakfast
syrup
sausage,
thing. Don't
battered,
worry about that.
fried, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
dipped in syrup. Okay.
No,
that
the
should
moment
be-
it left Graham's lips, I was on board with that.
What
That
I'm hearing
might be a
here
Sonic
is
item. That might be a Sonic
McGriddle,
item.
which you guys told me was bad. So we're coming full circle here.
It is bad.
McGriddle equals good. Nope.
It's
Sounds too Scottish.
it's bad and good.
I think McGriddle might be playing right back for us pretty soon.
We will see. We will see. All right. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is where you can get our bonus content. We got some USMNT transfer talk coming to the feed and much more on TSS Plus. Do join us there. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. Also access to our Discord server. All of the cool kids are hanging out. They may be putting Taylor's big dog, you eat your corn dog however you like line on a certain channel in there. We shall see. Time
Stop
will
it.
tell.
Breaking the rules here.
Yep.
Breaking the rules. Too much context. We're also on YouTube. Check us out on YouTube if you want to see our beautiful faces talking about the USMNT rosters and much more. Graham is striking a pose as we speak. You'll know that if you're watching on YouTube. All
Graham, you
right.
can put the shirt back on, though. That's all right.
Okay, thanks. I've been in the gym. I was feeling good about myself, Joe.
Keep it off, Graham. Keep it off. As Joe mentioned, 499 days until the start of the World Cup. 499 days till our president welcomes folks from nations all over the world who are coming to the US to work, something he's quite famous for, of course. Looking forward to that one. But let's get into the rosters. I've actually had ChatGPT lay out the roster. Maybe I could lead with that if you like, or we could go with some actual analysis from you three. Whatever you want to do.
I didn't know that you were an editor-in-chief for most sports sites. That's interesting, Ryan. That's good work by you.
Here I am. Maybe we'll get to that later. Why don't we start off? We're going to go position by position. Once again, we're looking ahead to our 2026 rosters. Maybe we got some surprises. Maybe we got some new faces that are going to creep into these rosters. We're going to start, Taylor, with the goalkeeper position. Who you choosing in nets?
So, overall, did we decide, are we going 23 or 26 players first off? I just want to
26.
get that out of the way. 26,
Yes.
cool. Making sure. So, I feel confident about 13 players clearly being on the roster.
Ooh,
and
this is good.
And I feel mostly confident about 3 more. So that gets us to 16. So there's about 10 spots that I think are a little bit maybe more fluid than I had expected. We'll see if there is consensus there. For my goalkeepers, I think Matt Turner is still the number 1, even though he is not playing. He is only 30. He'll be turning 32, I believe, during the World Cup. He is one who I think desperately needs to make a move in the summer, be that back to Major League Soccer, elsewhere in the Premier League, really anywhere, as long as he's getting minutes. I think that keeps him in the number 1 spot. And then it really is sort of a toss-up from that point on. And so Patrick Schulte is one that has been called in by Poch. He's called into the January camp. I don't think he's made an appearance outside of January camps, though. But I still think we can look to some of the squads that Poch has gone for, and I think Schulte has done well in Major League Soccer, and I think will continue to be a starter. So with the reps, with the call-ups already existing, I had him in there. And then third choice can really go any number of ways. I've seen a lot of people thinking it might be Gaga Slonina or Diego Koken of Barcelona, but they're both very young, and again, a lot would have to change between now and then. So at present, as uncomfortable as it makes me, I'm saying Zach Steffen. He made very good saves in the January camp. He has been not particularly great in Major League Soccer, but he still continues to get call-ups. I think some of that is because he can make the saves, but is also somewhat okay with his feet, at least. So right now, I have it kind of as a status quo, 3 goalkeepers. We'll see how quickly that's torn apart by my fellow co-hosts.
Yeah. Joe, tearing apart at all?
Biting and tearing. No, I mean, I'm not one to get hot and bothered about the third goalkeeper choice, although Taylor's doing his absolute best to make me enraged.
I spent way too much time agonizing over the third goalkeeper, and I still am. But
I actually had an easier time with the third goalkeeper rather than the second goalkeeper, which is just a really nice microcosm of this entire show. I also did my confidence ratings, Taylor, while you were talking. You had 13 players you were confident in. I have 15 that I feel confident in. So we're really in the same ballpark on that, which is interesting. My second goalkeeper behind Matt Turner, who is the obvious starting pick here, is Matt Freese with NYCFC.
Okay.
I don't think this is very likely, to be clear, but I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility. He's called up to January camp. He doesn't actually play. He's been one of the better American shot stoppers in MLS since he's become a starter with NYCFC. You could bring Schulte, who actually has had an outside of January camp start. He started in September under Mikey Varas, but we don't have to acknowledge that window.
Yeah, but not under Poch, though, right? Yeah.
Not under Poch. But you could go with him. You could go with any number of guys. I did go with Diego Koken as that third option. I don't even think he needs to be playing for Barcelona, frankly, because the third goalkeeper is never going to play. They're always brought along for leadership reasons, and you don't need to do that leadership bit with a third goalkeeper in this case because Matt Turner's already been to a World Cup and has already started games, and there's going to be a ton of other players in this squad who check that World Cup experience / veteran kind of roster mold. So I'm going with Koken because I think he's the highest upside of the youth goalkeeping kind of ranks right now. He's already been in and around this team. He's been in under Poch. I think this is a valuable experience building kind of moment for him looking to the future.
I think that makes sense, Joe, but I fear an England at the 2010 World Cup scenario where someone makes a mistake in the first game, then you're rifling through the second goalkeeper, then all of a sudden the third goalkeeper actually does matter, where I think England went through Rob Green, Joe Hart and David James at that World Cup. And so my confidence in Matt Turner, I think Matt Turner is quite clearly the number 1 at this point. Poch has started him in the 2 competitive games. I also think he's probably still the best pure goalkeeper in the pool, even though he hasn't played a single Premier League minute for Crystal Palace this season. He also has the experience of 2022 on his side as well. He's been at a World Cup before. Patrick Schulte is my number 2. Had a good Olympics, had a good season with Columbus. I like his distribution better than most other goalkeepers in the pool as well. And I think just reading the tea leaves on who starts that first game against Venezuela, I think maybe Poch sees him as his second choice as well at the moment. My third choice I agonised over, because I'm with you, Joe. Matt Freese was the first one who came to mind for me, because he had a good season with NYCFC. It feels like maybe he's potentially going to Europe, but then I was thinking about Diego Koken. That then, if he actually needs to play, I'm less confident in his ability then. Then I'm like, Brad Guzan. Does Brad Guzan fill us with confidence as a veteran player coming into the squad, even as like a dressing room influence? Decided against that ultimately, so I think I'm going with Matt Freese, but I don't feel great about it.
All right, very good. Goalkeeper court sorted. Graham, I'll stay with you. Centre backs. Let's head there, shall we? What you got?
Okay, so I have selected 5 centre backs. First at the top of the depth chart, Tim Ream. I have concerns about his lack of speed in a back four.
How old will he be then?
Oh, goodness
67.
knows.
67.
He's pretty high on the Buffon chart at this point, to be honest. But I still think he reads the game better than most other centre backs in the pool. Experience, leadership, Viking hair, all those things. So Tim Ream is top of the list.
I think it'll be 38.
Chris Richards. Say that again, Taylor. It'll be 38.
I believe so. Yeah.
It's not as old as I thought he was going to be, actually. But I mean,
Sprightly.
It's all relative with Tim Ream at this point. But he's very clearly still prominent in the pool. Second, Chris Richards has been up and down in form for Crystal Palace this season, but I think is still the centre-back in the pool playing at the highest level. He started 10 Premier League games this season, which is not bad. He's got a decent amount of minutes. He's decent with his feet, has good positional awareness. We know about Chris Richards at this point. Third on my list, Cameron Carter-Vickers, CCV, having a good season for Celtic, good all-round centre-back, physically strong, good in the air. Not a great turn of pace, but I think a better passer out from the back than some are willing to give him credit for. Also has a past relationship with Poch, having come through it at Tottenham, so the two of them know each other well. This is where I start to get a little bit more fluid now. Mark McKenzie. Still not totally convinced, but did a decent enough job in the Jamaica games. Poch seems to like him, can play in a back four or a back three. Is comfortable going between those shapes in and out of possession. And then I've got my first wild card for my fifth selection.
Yep.
Nocky Banks.
On
Might
my
seem
list.
knee-jerk, but I think anyone starting in the Bundesliga, and he is getting minutes, and I know there's an injury that lets him into the team, but he seems to be doing relatively well. This pool is so weak compared to the rest of the squad that if you're starting games and getting regular minutes in the Bundesliga, you're on the radar. And I think we looked at him for that Patreon episode a couple of weeks ago. He's got good passing range, he's comfortable on the ball, has a very impressive physical frame for a player of his age. He's only 18, he'll be like 19 or 20 by the time the World Cup comes around. He seems to have good versatility as well, where he can play in a back four or as one of the left or right-sided centre-backs in a back three. I even found one article that says he played in midfield for Augsburg's youth team, so I like that about him as well. So he's on the plane. Nocky Banks, you're coming to the World Cup.
Yeah, I love that pick, Graham. He is my fifth center back as well. I am very much, for these positions that you don't really expect to get a whole lot out of, I lean towards giving experience in this cycle of this group of players because so many of these guys have been there before. I've got Banks on my list. I watched a bunch of his tape earlier today. The distribution is impressive. The fact that he is getting minutes and is highly regarded at Augsburg, as far as I can tell, and has been around that club for quite some time. And I know you all did a deeper breakdown of him on the Patreon, so I don't need to relitigate a bunch of that stuff. But he's an impressive young player and someone that I could legitimately see becoming an impactful player for Augsburg between now and the World Cup. Unlike Koken, who I don't think is going to play for Barcelona between now and that World Cup. But Banks is my fifth center back. I've got Tim Ream, I've got Mark McKenzie, I've got Richards, so we're aligned on all of those, Graham. I went with Miles Robinson over CCB. I got to be honest. I know I'm supposed to care. I don't really care a whole lot. I think there is virtually nothing separating Zimmerman and Robinson and CCV and Trusty. You could draw a name out of the hat, and I would be just fine with any one of those guys. But the other four, even with Banks as like a weird part of that four, I would be pretty excited to see at the World Cup.
All right. Taylor, is Banks a breakthrough for you as well?
To be honest, I kind of forgot about him until this exact moment. So I did not have him on there, but I'm toying with it because what I did have was Chris Richards, Tim Ream, Miles Robinson. I also had Cameron Carter-Vickers, which brings me to 4. I did not have Mark McKenzie. And the player I had was Henri Chase. We have not yet seen where he's going to go with his national team loyalties. It's between the United States and Japan. He has been starting Stuttgart games in the Bundesliga, though has not started, I think, their last couple games at least. So I think maybe in that case, because he isn't fully cap-tied and isn't really fully committed to the U.S. at this point, Nokai Banks probably makes more sense. But since I said Chase coming in, I will stick with Chase for now. I think he's probably going to be the subject of some heavy recruitment. I think Poch will probably put in a phone call, and we'll see how far they can take that. And then the only other one was CCV for me, just because I think Poch at times likes a sort of scrappy defender who's going to work hard, win stuff in the air, win physical challenges, and maybe do the simple passing to the center back who can then do the more elaborate passing. And so I think CCV might tick a lot of boxes for Poch, so I
Yeah.
put him in there ahead of some other options.
Yeah, Poch liked CCV so much he gave him so many minutes with Tottenham, just minutes on minutes on minutes. He really rated him.
He was
wanted
slightly
to be a big
younger,
part of that squad.
I do think.
No, that's fair. And the Chase one is a great shout, Taylor. That is like a difference-making level player, I think, in this U.S. pool right now. I don't know if he's an auto starter, but I would absolutely take Henry Chase over my Miles Robinson, CCV, Trustee Zimmerman, take one name out of a hat pick. And probably over Banks as well if I was really forced to make that decision. The only other thing I want to note on this group, because I think we've been a bit dismissive of him as a threesome, which is totally fine because we don't have to rate him in the same way Poch does. But Mark McKenzie is clearly a starting player for Mauricio Pochettino at this point. He would have started all four, so the two friendlies in the October window and the two competitive Nations League games in the November window. He would have started all four of those games for Pochettino, except against Mexico in the first window away. In Guadalajara, he came up injured in warm-ups, basically, is what happened. And that's why Miles Robinson starts that game. But it seems pretty clear to me that Pochettino rates Mark McKenzie. And I think there are things about his game that are really promising and impressive. And there's a reason why he's in one of the better leagues in the world right now in Ligue 1 with Toulouse. I just wanted to make that note. We don't have to agree necessarily. I know we talked plenty about his defensive shortcomings against Jamaica away. Those are real things. But McKenzie probably figures to be a little bit of a bigger part of this equation than we have mentioned so far. And that's fine.
And I think that's a good point, Joe. I think that's a valid argument and a pretty strong argument, too. I think what this speaks to for me is the position groups that I feel least comfortable about. There are three. One is a bit more of a broad position group, but center back is one of them. Because I think you could give me any list of names. Any of the names that you all have given me, if we put them all together, you could pull five out of there and I would say, like, yeah, sure. Maybe we take all of them. Who knows? And I think that's a sign that, like, there's some quality there. But I think anybody who kind of comes on, starts more games, starts getting more minutes, and looks decent enough in a U.S. shirt, I think is going to be in consideration pretty quickly because I don't think it's a strong position group at present.
All right. Well, Taylor, fullback, very important, obviously, for Mauricio Pochettino. Mm-hmm. Who's on the plane in that position for you?
This one was also somewhat trickier. I had two nailed on people in the group, which would be Serginho Dest and Jedi Robertson. I still am interested to see how he will make that work with both of them playing, but that's one of them champagne problems sort of situations. And then I have Joe Scally as a player I am mostly confident in because I think he can do the right back job, but also can slide over and become a right center back in possession to give the U.S. that kind of back three look when they possess the ball. And so I like him doing that versus pushing on into the attack, and then that allows Jedi Robinson to kind of patrol up and down that left side. I think in the past, World Cup managers have liked fullbacks who maybe could do a number of different things, and that would be, for example, Joe Scally, who can be a fullback who can be more attacking, but can also kind of slot in and be that center back. And that's where, in this case, I have DeJuan Jones right now as my other fullback because he can play on the left or the right. And so if you want to use Scally centrally or you don't trust Scally to do the attacking things on the right-hand side, you could put Jones in there, but he could also back up Jedi Robinson and do some Jedi Robinson things. Maybe not to the level that Jedi can do them, but I think he gives you variety and versatility. So those are my four fullbacks.
Okay, very good. Who's got some John Tolkien love? Either of you guys?
I do.
Yay! Let's hear it.
Yeah, so I think three of the fullbacks pretty much pick themselves at this point. Jedi Robinson, Serginho Dest. If he's fit, I mean, I'm not entirely sure what the status of Serginho Dest is right now because I saw a report in August.
Even when he's fully fit, are we ever?
No,
he's unknown.
He is a bit of an unknown entity, Serginho Dest. But I saw a report in August that said he was back in training. And so far, nothing. He's not played a game for PSV. So I'm not sure if he's had... I did a quick Google search. I couldn't find anything. I don't know if he's had a setback or if Peter Bosz is just holding him back. I don't know. But if he's fit, he's on the plane. Joe Scally as well. I think Joe Scally's actually looking at his season for Gladbach and also some of his performances for the US on the right side of that back three. I think he's in a really good place right now, Joe Scally. I think he's clearly in the best moment of his USMNT career, so he's on the plane clearly. And my fourth fullback is, while I hear your argument for Jones, Taylor, and he was certainly on my radar and I considered it, and I thought he came out of the Costa Rica game was the second match, right? He came out of that with his stock up. We talked about that last week on the show. But John Tolkien, I can't ignore him. Been really impressed with him. He's made that move to the Bundesliga, which I think will be healthy for him, if only for him to experience that the earth is actually round. That will be good for him. And I just like the way he gives you a slightly different look. He can drive centrally. I think his crossing has improved. I think he's improved in possession. And he's now playing in the Bundesliga, albeit for a team that's fighting relegation. But I think by the time the World Cup comes around, he'll be pretty much close to a lock in this team. As my prediction is, John Tolkien will become a more prominent part of this group.
I think that's a fair prediction, Graham, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. I only went with 3 fullbacks, and I'm only bringing 1 pure left back. Maybe that's a flaw in my roster build. I feel like with 5 center backs already, and Scally's a positionally flexible guy, which Taylor, you got too well, and Graham with Scally in your squad too. Dest can play on both sides. Also on the Dest ACL thing, he tore it in April, I believe April 20th in training. He's not back yet because people don't recover from ACL injuries typically quite that fast. I think we will see him back soon-ish, and we will certainly see him back on the field before 26. I mean, as much as we can be certain about these kinds of things. But Des can play on both sides, and that's great. And Jedi is the other pick. I only went with 3, like I said, because I feel like at left back, Jedi is going to play every minute, most likely anyway. Even if he gets hurt, Des can play on the left, and Scally is a perfectly fine starting player on the right side at a World Cup level. I don't love his game because he's a limited player, but that's the deal when you play for the U.S. men's national team for the most part. And then Tim Ream can also give you a little bit of cover at left back, even though nobody's going to be particularly excited about that come 2026 because nobody's ever been excited about that. And I'm talking to one of the Charlotte FC fans on this particular podcast. So
Ryan has.
That's true. Ryan says every time, I love how Tim Ream at left back can pass the ball to Karol Swiderski at striker. That's my favorite thing about Charlotte FC, and I want to see it from now until the end of time. Those are my only 3 fullbacks. I think they're all absolute locks for this squad, assuming Dest is healthy.
Joe, I think it's also a good point that with some of these center backs, if you are sort of looking at maybe a back 3 or the kind of hybrid back 3 in possession, then maybe you could use a person
Weah or Musa or McKennie or whoever else is in this
Kevin
squad.
Paredes would be the other one. You could use him as a wing back. And then just wanted to shout Caleb Wiley. He's the other one that I think is nominally in contention. He's made his move. He just has to keep getting minutes and keep looking strong, and I think then get called into a camp and then look good in camp. So he's in the conversation in the bubble, but right now I think others are ahead of him, to borrow a phrasing from Jurgen Klinsmann.
Wonderful stuff. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're looking at the midfield of our rosters for 2026. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to USMNT Weekly. Joe Lowry is now going to lay out his central midfield pack. You can make it defensive, central. What are you feeling? Who's in the middle of the park, Joe, for you?
Yeah, this is an area that I don't feel great about just from like a roster construction standpoint. I feel fine enough about a lot of these names. But I've got 3 defensive midfielders, and more defensive-minded midfielders, and 4 more central midfielders, although the lines blur, and that's fine. Tyler Adams is a lock on this squad, as he should be. I have Johnny Cardoso, and I have Aiden Morris. Aiden Morris is on this entire squad is probably the first one that I would drop, just because I don't really know that you need all 3 of those players, but I wasn't that enthused about my winger options that we'll get to later on after the first couple. So, Aiden Morris, congratulations. You have made the cut. I'm thrilled to have you here, and I will never leave you. Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, Tanner Tessman, and Malik Tillman. Those are my 7 midfielders. Tillman kind of blurs the line between center mid and attacking mid, but Adams would be the obvious starter here, although we have seen Cardoso, we have seen Morris already get looks under Poch, not least because Adams hasn't been healthy to play under Mauricio Pochettino just yet, and that is always a concern. McKennie's a no-brainer and can play in a number of different spots if Poch keeps that 3-2-5 attacking shape that he's used in 3 of his 4 games so far, non-January camp games, I should be clear. Musa is a flexible option. He's played a little bit wider, even though I do prefer him more centrally. Tessman's just a fun player, and if he figures out the defensive stuff and some of the transition work between now and 26, I think he's a real competitor for serious minutes here. And then Malik Tillman's just kind of like he's kind of my adult in this midfield group of all the fringe options. Tillman has never looked particularly strong for the U.S. in my mind. I think he's a promising player who just hasn't quite figured it all out yet. But Tillman's a guy that you put on in the 75th minute and you're relatively confident that he's able to keep the ball. He's not going to turn it over in bad spots. He's going to help you finish out a game. He's going to crash the box and give you something inside the 18. And he's mostly, again, just going to do a fine job. That's my Malik Tillman, I don't know, not necessarily propaganda, whatever the opposite of that is, but he's in this squad. Those are my defensive-minded midfielders and my more central-minded midfielders.
Very nice. ChatGPT had McKennie in goal, by the way. It's trying to complete the transfer
Yes!
graphic for him there. So good for ChatGPT.
I love that.
Graham, who have you got centrally?
Yes, there's a lot of overlap with Joe. I'm going to omit one player that Joe mentioned just because I'm going to include him in another category of my squad, but I've got Tyler Adams. I think he's probably playing, looking at the last few games, I think he's probably playing the best soccer of his entire career. I think he has been sensational for that Bournemouth team. I actually think that him playing in that Bournemouth midfield is potentially bringing on his possession game as well. And I know obviously the assists are something that riled you up, but he's playing those passes forward, and that's something that we have criticised Tyler Adams for in the past, is his progressive passing. Wes McKennie, same as Tyler Adams, impossible to imagine a US roster at this point without him. Yunus Musa in a good place at AC Milan under Conceição, good versatility. Poch has used him out wide, can play in the midfield unit, can play everywhere, could even play at right back, I guess, in this team. I have got Johnny Cardoso. Didn't feel great about that one. I know he hasn't really done it for the USMNT, but I think I'm envisaging a scenario where the US are 1-0 up in a quarter-final against England. That's 15 minutes to go, and they basically just need 2 destroyers in front of the back line, and you want Adams and Johnny Cardoso, which is what he's good at, is breaking up opposition moves and doing the defensive side of things. And the US maybe don't need to attack in the same way as they did earlier in the game. So he's kind of a scenario pick, Johnny Cardoso. I'm not envisaging building my midfield around him in any games. And then I agonised over my final central midfielder because I really wanted to put Jack McGlynn in terms of his profile. I like his profile over the player that I've actually ended up picking. I like his long passing and his long shooting, and I think he gives the US something a little bit different. But I can't ignore that Aidan Morris is playing at a higher level right now in the Championship, and is having, I know he's just returned from 2 months out with injury, but it's having a good season for Middlesbrough, and I think that move playing under Michael Carrick has, by all accounts, seems to have brought him on in terms of his passing and his rhythm building as well. So I went with Aidan Morris, even though by the time the World Cup actually comes around, I sort of hope Jack McGlynn has made a move to Europe, and I can put him in my squad at that point.
Graham, sorry, real quick. Did you have Tessman? I know you just talked, and this is
I didn't know. Tessman is similar to McGlynn in that I kind of feel like he's got a higher ceiling than Johnny Cardoso or even Aidan Morris. I just haven't seen enough of him in Europe to make that decision. But he was on my radar.
I think that's fair. The reason why McGlynn didn't make the cut for me, and he's on the list of 3 players from January camp that I'm intrigued about, but didn't actually make my roster. And the reason why he didn't jump over into this squad is because I think in a lot of ways he and Tessman are quite similar players, where Tessman has a really promising passing range. He is more physical. Tanner Tessman, he's got a better work rate as well. Not to imply that Jack McGlynn doesn't try, but like he's able to cover more ground, I guess, in that sense of work rate. And I think he's already playing at a higher level. And I just think it's going to be really hard for McGlynn to leapfrog not just whoever he would have to leapfrog if Tanner Tessman wasn't in the pool to get into this, but then also to leapfrog a player with sort of similar qualities whose game is already a bit more well-rounded. So I hope it happens because I think McGlynn is... His upside as a passer is higher than Tessman's in my mind, and they do approach that slightly differently. But just to explain from my reasoning, because you mentioned McGlynn, that's why he didn't end up making my squad.
All right. Taylor, any new names to introduce to the central part of the park?
The only one that I am battling with, because I have largely the same group, I struggle with Aidan Morris and Tanner Tessman. I went back and looked at my notes, and Joe, I forgot that we, or at least I, ended up much more positive about Tessman after his last appearance for the U.S.
Yeah, he was good.
He did some things, and then on the rewatch, I felt like he was more involved than I had given him credit for. But I also seem to recall Aidan Morris being one that kind of stood out in a positive way and didn't sort of back down from the situation.
There was a game he came off the bench for the second half of a match and was good. Was that the Canada game maybe, perhaps? I thought he was good in one of those matches.
That was, yes, that's right.
Yeah. So, but I promise I'm not trying to stall for time. I had Gio Reyna included as a central midfielder, but then realized I had an available spot in my forward line or in the attack, so I moved Gio Reyna there. The only other name that I would throw into the conversation is Cole Campbell, and it depends on where you want to put him. I guess you could put him in as maybe a wide attacker. He's only 18 years old now, 4 appearances for Dortmund. I believe he'll be 20 at the next World Cup because he hasn't had a birthday yet. I think it's in March or something like that. So he's never had a birthday. It's a weird thing.
That's sad.
So he's one who, because I think I share Joe's sort of this seems like it could be the pool, but also do we need Johnny and Morris and Tessman? I don't know. And so I think he's one who I'd put him on the bubble. But I think if we need more attacking options, which I think we do, then maybe he goes in there. So I'll throw him in instead of... you know what? I'm going to take Johnny out right now. I think Johnny is in there, but if I'm making it my own team, I don't know. I feel like Johnny has never really impressed. I feel like sort of others can do roughly the same job, whereas maybe in the next year we see Cole Campbell come on, become a key player for Dortmund, and then he's in that squad.
I'd love to see that. Campbell's not in my team, although I wish he was. he's
get
just
a
a winger
birthday
for
first.
me. At central midfield, he would get broken in half in I think about 65 seconds. But I'm also not
Right now
Johnny
he would.
Cardoso's. Right now, absolutely. I mean, he hasn't had a birthday.
Give him that Hulk serum. And
What can he do? But I'm also not a Johnny Cardoso stan, so you win some, you lose some.
Do you have him in your roster, Joe?
Campbell, no. Cardoso, yes.
Okay.
All right. Joe, why don't we talk about the wingers? Who have you got out wide?
I guess I'll blur my attacking midfielders into my wingers because I think for Poch, they will check a lot of similar boxes. I'll start with my attacking midfielders and then do the wingers just to move up the field.
Okay.
Gio Reyna is a lock for this squad, I think. That's just how it is, to be honest. Diego Luna made this team, in my mind, because I get to call the shots in my own roster, and I like Diego Luna, and I hope he does well. My wingers, I only brought 3 of them because I think Reyna and Luna can both play that narrow kind of dual 10 winger role that we've seen from Poch so far. Weah is one of them. He could also play wide as a one of those guys in the actual wide channels here. And that front line of 5, if that is indeed what the U.S. chooses to go with. Brendan Aronson made the cut for me because as much flack as I give him, because I think he is a super limited player, he runs like the Dickens, man, and that has value in some of these late World Cup games. Yeah, right. Good, huh?
Charles Dickens, noted Olympic sprinter. So
very much
that's
so.
Where that comes
He
from.
he has like a truly world class, in the most world classiest sense, engine, and I like that in a player who's going to be like my 23rd player in a roster. And then Pulisic is the obvious one. So Reyna, Weah, and Pulisic, I'm very much counting on doing the majority of the heavy lifting in this attack because that's how the U.S. pool is built right now.
All right. Graham, how's your wing, your attacking midfield looking?
Yes, I'll do the same as Joe and combine the two. Attacking midfielders, Malik Tillman, I'm including him in this category. Joe mentioned him as one of his central midfielders. Has arguably been PSV's player of the season. He's out injured at the moment, but has scored a bunch of goals for them. And that's important because when I really break it down here, who's going to score the goals in this team in a World Cup in competitive matches against high caliber opposition? Who can you count on to score goals? It's like Pulisic,
Cole Campbell with Hulk
And-
serum. Cole Campbell with Hulk serum. That's the
Well,
answer.
okay, you count on that, and I will count on Malik Tillman to potentially make up some of the difference there. It obviously hasn't, Joe pointed out, hasn't been great for the US, but I'm hoping he'll be able to carry some of his club form into the World Cup.
If
So
only,
Malik
Graham, if
Tillman-
only he could bring all of the PSV players with him, then I would actually start. Or if only he could bring all the PSV players with him and then also port the rest of the Eredivisie into the
There
World
it
Cup
is. Yeah,
and leave
yeah.
all the other teams at home. If we're looking for why his club form is so much better than his international form, I think the answer might be somewhere in there. I don't know. Maybe we can find it somewhere.
We can do that as long as we're leaving Luke de Jong at home. And
Totally
I might be
fine.
bringing one of his PSV teammates.
We're not bringing
later
old
on.
men except Tim Ream. Only one of them. We're only bringing
one
one
of them.
old man.
It would be amazing to bring Luke de Jong and then somehow start him ahead of Ricardo Pepi, just so that consistency is
Rico,
there.
bad news, bud. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, let's get rid. I do love how the Eredivisie defenses are talked about as though they're playing on like ice. Like it feels like no one ever really thinks that any Dutch league defenders can do anything at all, and maybe they can't. So yes, let's bring all of them to the World Cup to play the US, and I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, the greatest centre back of his generation didn't play in Holland at all. Virgil van Dijk. Yeah, that didn't.
Harry
that didn't
Maguire
happen.
played in Holland. I didn't know that.
No, Chris Richards played in Holland. That's what
There
it
it
is.
is.
Got it.
I mean, you could convince me that did actually happen. Anyway, Gio Reyna, Joe's pretty much covered it. I'm not giving up yet. I'm not entirely sure how he fits
I'll
into
die
my
before I give up on Gio
But the
Reyna.
thing is with Gio Reyna, clearly in terms of his talent, he makes this squad. But if you ask me to pick a starting lineup, I'm not entirely sure where I'm putting him in this team. But anyway, he's on the plane. My wide player is Christian Pulisic. I don't need to justify that inclusion. The best American player at this moment. Poch clearly wants to build around him. Tim Weah, after the Copa America, I did kind of wonder what Weah's future with the USMNT would be. It seemed like he was at a bit of a crossroads there after the red card, but clearly has something to offer with that directness and pace down the wing. Very versatile. He's even played at centre forward for Juventus this season, so I'm kind of counting him as a depth option at number 9 as well. Haji Wright makes my squad good in quick transition. He's actually out injured at the moment, but I don't think he'll be out injured for much longer, a few more weeks. But good in quick transition, good versatility. Also, similar to Weah, gives me a bit more cover in the centre forward position. I'm hopeful I won't have to use him in that area, but if there was a crisis, he could play there. And then finally, I am going to name a player that I'm not entirely sure if I'm allowed to pick, but Taylor picked Henri Chase. So I am picking Luca Koleosho to come to the World Cup. I liked the idea of Cole Campbell, but if I'm weighing up the two of those options, I'm bringing Koleosho because I actually think he might be able to make an impact at a World Cup tournament.
Very nice. Taylor, how's your attacking midfield and wings looking?
Yeah, I think I ran through some of my attacking midfield earlier to some extent because I had Malik Tillman in my central midfielders, but I would add Gio Reyna to that list and Brendan Aronson, as Joe did. And then I had Pulisic, Reyna, and Weah rounding out that attacking group. Joe, since we're 499 days away, I remember you advocating for Tyler Adams ahead of 2022. At what point do we need to start wrapping Pulisic in bubble wrap for you?
I mean, I'm pretty much good now. I think we're good. Anytime is fine.
Just freeze him in carbonite until about 3 weeks before.
Yeah,
the
that's
Cup
what we
close.
did what we did in 22. And you know what? Everybody was healthy. You're welcome. Actually, that was still wild that happened, and everybody except Gio Reyna, maybe kind of, sort of, I don't know, was healthy for that tournament, and that was a very, very good thing for the United States.
The one mistake you don't want to make, you want to remember that there is going to be the carbonite sickness when you come out of being frozen in carbonite. So you've got to give a little bit of time to kind of get the respiratory system up and running. So you want to maybe give him 3 to 4 weeks ahead of
that's
the first
fine.
kick.
Like June. Yeah. We'll dust him off around May 1. We'll dust him off.
Ryan, I can see Ryan's inside of Ryan's head is just screaming nerds as loud as he can, and I
just
really
thinking,
appreciate it.
You can't run like the Dickens if you've got carbonite poisoning, frankly.
It's true.
So,
You can't.
It's true. That is
It's
an issue.
really, really hard.
All right, let's take one more quick break. When we come back, we're looking at our strike pool, and we're going to take a look back at our rosters we picked and how we think they'll fare in the US in 2026. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to USMNT Weekly. Taylor Rockwell, it is now the final component, perhaps the most important component of the rosters that we're going to build. The forwards. Who you got? Be careful.
Yeah, I feel like I
feel like this is where the greatest variance between us might occur. I'm interested to see how this
Ryan's
goes.
rage was about to know no bounds.
I do not have Patrick Agyemang, but we'll see if he ends up making the list. I have it as the conventional 3. I think it's Balogun. I think he'll still be given opportunities. He's been out with injury. He'll be coming back sometime in late February, I think was the timeline I saw. But that's still plenty of time for him to kind of either get back into the starting 11 for Monaco or maybe get a move in the summer and then start scoring some goals, maybe at a lower level. But still, I think just playing is going to be really important to get his name into consideration for the camp. I think Ricardo Pepi is obviously very much in the conversation, unless we bring Luke de Jong and somehow make him eligible for the USMNT, which I think is going to be tricky. And then for the third one, I have Josh Sargent still. He's been a very good player for Norwich. He's still scoring goals in the Championship. There's a chance he's back in the Premier League next season, either with Norwich or with another club. So I think right now it's kind of the same old 3 for me. I think there are other players who could challenge for that. But again, we have the sort of shortened timeline. We don't have as many camps. And so I think some of the known entities are probably going to stay the known entities. But that is the third area that I have concern about. It's basically center backs, midfield depth and variety, as we kind of already hit on, and then the attack, generally speaking. I think an injury to Pulisic, and we're all very, very, very concerned. And I feel like less so with the forwards. I feel like if one of them is injured, we'll just maybe throw Agyemang in and see what happens. But it's kind of a set group for me right now with others on the outside who could challenge but aren't at present.
Taylor, who was the first name on your striker list? Like literally in your notes, like who was the one on top of that list?
Who's starting?
So to answer Joe's question, I had Balogun first on my list. I think right now it's Ricardo Pepi is starting. Though I feel like he has been really good as the super sub, and I don't know. It's basically who looks good in camps over the next 499 days, basically, because I still don't think I have a good read on who fits what Pochettino wants the most. Because I think Pepi could do some of the Harry Kane dropping deeper to link play and lay off passes and then make runs, but I think Balogun could do that as well. But I think because there's been such a long period under Berhalter where I don't think we saw Balogun utilized in the best way, or I don't think Balogun looked particularly sharp for the U.S., I think it's a more open group than I would have expected at this point in 2025.
Sure.
But I have it Pepi maybe edging out, especially because he's fit and playing, and Balogun is not.
Yeah, I guess I asked the question because for me, when I was sort of building through this roster, I thought it was interesting because I separated it into positions, and then just the ones that felt like locks to me, I just started there, right? Mm-hmm. And you just build from, in defensive midfield, Tyler Adams was the first name that I wrote down, right? I thought it was interesting for me that when I got to the strikers, Pepi was the first name I wrote down. I was curious to see, Graham is nodding, which makes me think it was the same for him. It's interesting that I feel like that is probably the more common take at the moment, even though I think Balogun's ceiling as a player is super high, and I really do like his game. Pepe feels like the dude right now, and part of that's because he hasn't had to compete with the same complement of strikers for the U.S. since Poch arrived, because Balogun's been hurt and there's been injuries other spots in that number 9 depth chart. But I do have Pepe as my number 1, and I would probably start him if there was an important game tomorrow, not least because Balogun hasn't been healthy. But Balogun, even if he was, I'd probably still go Pepe.
Yeah.
Balogun's in my squad, and Sargent's my 3rd, just like you, Taylor, because I am similar to the Malik Tillman bit I did earlier. I just kind of want an adult. Like, I want someone that I am relatively confident is going to put in something of a shift. And Josh Sargent, that's describing Josh Sargent to a T. He's never become quite that finesse player that I thought he was going to be when he scores that delightful goal for the U20s at the World Cup, however long ago that was, and he spins and it's so nice and you think, holy cow, this guy's unbelievably good. Like, that just hasn't really happened for him on the ball, but he's going to put in a shift, even though Agyemang is way more fun of a player at this point, and the new shiny thing is so much more fun anyway. It's not impossible, but like we said in that listener question a while back, I am probably thinking it's going to take a little bit more for someone to break into that group of 3.
Yeah,
okay.
I think for me there are 2 locks we've covered on Pepe and Balogun. Pepe's scoring goals, which is something that Balogun isn't doing. I know he's out injured at the moment, but even before then it wasn't like Balogun was knocking them in for fun. And I know we've already talked about the Eredivisie defences, but Balogun's playing in Ligue 1. You take PSG out of the equation there, and it's a comparable quality of league. So I think Ricardo Pepe, he's having a good season for PSV, even if Luc de Jong continues to sit on him. I think he's top of the pecking order right now. I'm bringing Balogun. He's stalled since going to Monaco. We've not seen the best of him for the US, but I still think in quick transition he is the best forward in that mould for the US at this point. And Joe said he wanted an adult for his 3rd choice. I kind of go the other way. I want a throw of the dice. I want someone who is going to FS up in the last 10 minutes of a game. And I'm bringing him, Ryan. I'm bringing him. This is almost certainly a knee-jerk reaction to what we just watched last week, but I'll make the case. I'm bringing Patrick Agyemang. And as I say, I don't want a big pool of number 9s. I've got a bit of cover from Weah and Hadji Wright who can play in that position. I've got Pepe and Balogun. I'm not envisaging Agyemang getting a lot of minutes, but as I say, I want my final centre forward to be a wild card. The 10 minutes of a game, you just need to shake the snow globe in some way. You throw him on and you see what happens. So he's on the plane right now.
Congratulations. One of you's not a coward. I love it.
If Pochettino were to be like, you know what, we're bringing him to just throw him on and see what happens, fired, right? Fired? Like that's not really what I want to see from a coach. But I hear your reasoning.
It's very Harry Redknapp, isn't it? That.
That's international football.
Well,
like that is international football. It's not as intricate. Like occasionally, you just throw the dice and see what happens. So he's my player to do that.
Harry Redknapp is the one who's notorious for his excellent spelling, right? I would love to see him try to spell Patrick Agyemang's name correctly. That would be lovely, lovely, lovely. I know that's a somewhat esoteric reference, but if you Google it, I think there was a Tottenham team sheet from many years ago where they got his like starting 11 and he misspelled like literally every single player's name. It made me so very happy.
Yeah, I mean, he struggled to spell the name of his dog in his tax forms correctly.
Well, it was the dog who wrote those 11s.
Yeah, it was the dog who wrote the starting lineup.
Oh, yeah. I take it back then. He's a very good coach. But I will not allow this Josh Sargent erasure to stand. He has scored goals for Norwich, a whopping 6, but also 5 assists. I don't think Norwich will get promoted because they are, I think, further back in the table than I realized when we started this. But I still think there's a chance he could get another move or just continue to score goals in the championship. But that has never been the most exciting thing. So I do think that is a more open spot, potentially.
All right, Taylor, so the 26 you've picked, if that were to be the 26, how would you feel about that?
Concerned, I think. I think there's a couple of different reasons. I think some of that is like quality in certain positions. I have a lot of worries about the center back pool and basically what Pochettino wants that to be, because there's a world in which we could see Austin Trusty, who I don't think any of us mentioned, and Cameron Carter-Vickers starting together for the rest of this year and maybe next year too. And so at that point, do you bring 2 center backs who've played together? Like is that where like the sort of stock rises? Like I just think that's one where we could see a few players that we haven't even talked about suddenly come into consideration, but I'm not sure that's what you want when you're looking at present day scenarios. I think the concern, not even concern, but just question mark I have around Dest and Jedi being involved and how do you make that work would make me a little bit nervous, even if I think both of them have to be starting if they're both available. Midfield, I feel okay about. Attack, I feel somewhat better about, but it is still largely Pulisic, kind of carrying things, Weah running direct, and then a number 9 we hope can kind of rise to the occasion. So I feel okay about it, but I'm very happy that we've got a season and a half left for players to kind of cement some things or improve on some things.
Mm-hmm. Graham, of the roster you picked, what's the vibe? Is it sort of youthful core with a 38-year-old in the back? What's the philosophy, if you will?
Well, I mean, it's what we've seen from Poch in the last few games, which is an energetic team with greater intensity that we saw under Berhalter. That is quite a lot of positional play. Hopefully, quite threatening and quick transition and attack. I wouldn't mind. I mean, there's definitely going to have to be a course correction for the US, I think, at the World Cup, where when you come out of 2022, the hope was that this team becomes more expansive and is able to take the game to opponents. I don't think that's likely, to be honest, at 2026. But that's okay. We see national teams playing that way all the time and achieve success. So I think there is a formula here where the US makes a deep run at this tournament. I was certainly warmer on this group of players when I put it together than it seems Taylor is. But I'm not American, and I've been there before with Scotland, where the closer it gets to the tournament, the more nervous you feel. I think there are some problem positions in the squad. Centre-back is quite clearly the biggest one. But I think Poch is finding some solutions with players like Joe Scally, using him in a slightly different way as a right-back that becomes a right-sided centre-back in a back three. Yunus Musa ahead of him. So I think slowly but surely Poch is finding some solutions to the problems that the US had as recently as last summer.
To clarify, I'm not sure the problems are like Poch needs to find a solution. It's more so my concern for this team is run through the list. Dest is injured. Matt Turner isn't playing. We don't know who the starting center backs will be because it's kind of a mixed bag. Tyler Adams needs to stay fit, but is playing really well. He is definitely a bright spot. Weston McKennie is playing at fullback, so we're going to move him to center mid and hope that works well. Yunus Musa has played out wide, can play central. I feel better about that, but then I look at the midfield depth from there. It's a little bit, again, of a mixed bag to keep that one going. And then in the attack, like I think there's Pulisic. I think Weah is in that conversation. He's a nailed on one for me. And then it is sort of a group that, like, if and when it could be good. But I think there's just so many question marks that aren't about what Pochettino needs to figure out, but more about where these players are in their career. That's where I think some of my concern comes from. A large percentage of my concern, I should say.
I kind of look at it the other way, where I think there are a lot of players who are in good places right now in their career, particularly in that midfield. Like Tyler Adams, right now the discussion is completely different around him than it would have been a few months ago. Wes McKennie is, as he's saying in interviews, there's no transfer talk around him at the moment, which is a good sign. Tim Weah
he's a fullback. Yep. like that's
sure,
the
but he's
kind
still,
of thing, right?
Like, we highlighted how well he's been playing in for Juventus. So of course there are caveats, but like Tim Weah as well, not a key player for Juventus, but has still had a bunch of minutes. Like Ricardo Pepi scoring goals in the Eredivisie. Like, these players are delivering in a sense, and I think unless you're England or France or Spain, like, this is just the way it is for national teams, that they don't have a great deal of depth. They will have problem positions. That's the same for absolutely everyone, and I think the US is in... I think they're in a better place now than they were in the summer, which I know is an incredibly low bar considering where the US was last summer. But that's the best that we can hope for is progress as we get closer to the World Cup.
Yeah, I'm sort of the mind that the pool basically is what it is between now and 26. I don't really anticipate a lot of major changes. You hope maybe you get an Henri Chase, or maybe you get a Lucho Acosta, although, who knows what's going on there. You hope that you get Diego Luna or Tessman or any of the more speculative picks that are across our different rosters banks. You hope that you get one of those guys becoming like a can't drop starting player for a really good club team, and that they show out with the US so that they are a can't drop starter for Pochettino as well. I'm still, though, sort of the mind that even if one of those things happens, even if one of those players really takes the reins and makes huge progress in their careers, it's not going to matter that much. I think this is a solid player pool. I don't think it's great. I don't think it is one of the 12 best in the world. I think this is a group where we're talking about, Ryan, I think you asked about how this team would do or how worried we are or how we feel about them going into 26. They're going to be the top seed in their group, which is huge for a host. That's going to matter. There are more teams in this tournament than we've ever seen in a World Cup before, which means the bottom team in that group is going to be imminently beatable. Obviously, anything can happen in a 90-minute game in the group stage. Then, even if you somehow fall on your face in the group stage, the odds of not being one of those third-place teams is pretty low. So the U.S. is almost certainly, with their favorable group draw that they will be getting as that top seed, as the host, going to make it out of the group. Then, after that, it's a huge crapshoot. One that I think probably benefits the U.S. on the whole, that there is now an extra knockout round of 32. Yeah, you could go home with a round of 32 on home soil, and that's embarrassing, and nobody's happy about that. That is, of course, a possibility. The flip side is, well, for a team that doesn't have as much quality compared to some of the other teams that are really competing as favorites for the World Cup in 26, you want as much variance as possible. If you're the U.S., you want as many horseshoes thrown into the, wrenches thrown into the gears as possible. You want all of that stuff. And I think this probably does benefit the U.S. So with this group of players, a run to the quarterfinals, like all the former players from the 90s that are now talking heads are talking about as being the bar that the U.S. must get to, right? That's a bit silly, I think. But it's possible. It's not out of the realm of possibility, just as getting bounced in the round of 32 is not out of the realm of possibility. That is just kind of where this U.S. group is as a team. The last thing, because I know we've got to run here in a second, the last thing that I want to hit at is I think the Dest question is fascinating. I think that is like the most interesting tactical question that Poch has to answer between now and 26. Like, how does Serginho Dest fit into this team? Because Joe Scally, in 3 of his 4 starts for the U.S. at right back, has played as a right-sided center back in possession, and that is not a Serginho Dest thing. Does he end up, maybe we talked about Man City in their 2-3-5 shape as opposed to their 3-2-5 on yesterday's show. Maybe we see Dest as a right back instead of staying home with the center backs. Maybe he pushes more into midfield, or maybe there's a different rotation on that right side. I've got him in my starting 11 for 26. I think I would probably move into midfield a little bit and change the structure. But I'm legitimately fascinated to see what Poch is going to do and how Dest fits into this project.
So I want to end, for me at least, on that point about I'm fascinated in what Poch is going to do. Because that is, I think, the biggest thing that has me enthusiastic about 2026. And I think that's where I'm realizing we have roughly the same group of players. There's a few differences in there. But you all, I think, are more optimistic about the group than I seem to be. And I'm trying to figure out why that's the case. And I think it's because Joe has, generally speaking, realistic expectations and sets a realistic bar. I think Graham, as an honorary U.S. citizen, has a realistic bar of like, yeah, this is where you guys should be. I think I'm maybe inclined to be like, yes, but we could win it all. You never know. And I think I always have that level of enthusiasm. But if I'm being honest, I don't think we've had that in quite some time. I think about Copa America this past summer, where we sort of, Joe, established what the bar was for the U.S., like what the acceptable bar was for performance in that. And obviously they didn't meet it. But I think we both just kind of assumed, like, yeah, they're going to get out of the group and they're going to lose in the first round, and that's kind of what the bar is going to be, and then on we're going to go. And I do think with Poch coming in, he's a better, more renowned manager that I think does bring a little bit of intimidation factor. I think when you have Pochettino on the sideline, teams are going to kind of wonder what he's going to throw out or what wrinkle might he come up with and what changes might he make in-game to affect the outcome. And so I think I do have more enthusiasm because I think I have more expectation. I think I'm then nervous about how do you meet that expectation? How do you make it to the next round? How do you make it further than we have in the past? And that's where I look at this team and have concerns. But I think if the bar is sort of what it has been, then I'm feeling pretty confident in this U.S. squad. The Poch thing at the end for me is just that I'm then fascinated what type of coach he is going to be at national team level. Is he this is my pool, this is the squad, now I've got to coach him up and bring them together? Or is he going to be a little bit more ruthless? Is it going to be, this guy didn't play the way I needed him to play, this guy isn't capable of doing it, so I'm starting a 19-year-old, and I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to bring in a veteran MLS center back because he can at least do what I'm asking him to do. I'm fascinated to see if Poch is a run through the kind of pool and end up with a group of players that maybe we didn't see coming, but end up making sense for him, or is he coach them up and see what they can do? I think we'll have more answers as we have more camps, but for now, it's a really interesting position for the U.S. to be in.
We will have more answers indeed. Just 499 days to go to have these debates, and it's 6 windows, I believe we mentioned, before the World Cup comes around. Yeah, it is a little bit.
I believe it's 8, but we're in the right ballpark.
Oh, I feel better now.
Yeah, problem solved.
Okay, all right. Thanks for the math update, Joe. Very good. Is your glass half full or is it half empty, listener, on the state of the roster? Let us know. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Shows where our Discord is. You can have a chat with us there. But for now, Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much indeed for USMNT weeklying with us, sir.
Right back at you, my friend. I'm sorry I let you down on the Ajamang pick.
That's okay. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
Fair.
All right. Graham Ruthven, not disappointed in you, bud. Thank you very much.
Justice for number 33. Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
And Joe Lowry, a pleasure as always, my good man, despite your strikingly cowardice. Thank you very much.
Corn dog.
Oh, thank you very much, listener, for joining us on this intrepid journey. We'll be back on the feed very shortly. But for now, bye.